Yeah, I'm a little bit late with my LG G7 review, but actually just think about one thing for a moment. This phone, at least here in Germany, is already down to about 500 euros, which is cheaper than even something like a OnePlus 6, which obviously soon will be replaced with the 6T. But still, in case you're wondering if you should actually pick one up but aren't quite sure, maybe I can help. So let's see about that and start off with the design and build quality. And the first big plus that I have to give it, it's just noticeably more compact than most flagship these days, because most are still about as big as the OnePlus 5T, and you can see that this is noticeably shorter, and especially, which is the important part, narrower. The thickness isn't that important, but this phone, after all, is easier to handle in one hand, almost up to the top with its 19:9 display ratio. It is a different, believe me, because not everyone wants to have a big phone, but some people still want a flagship, and this might be that solution. Now, I still have to complain about a few things like I did last year with the G6, like for example, sorry. This, to me, especially with its super lightweight feel, feels just a little bit less premium, a little bit also on the hollow side. If you don't care about that, and it is actually built very well because it doesn't creak, the buttons have a good tactile feedback, and there is only minimal rattle, but still, it kind of takes away of the luxury feel that I would want to get, especially if you're talking about feel. I have to also mention that the sides are getting wider towards the back, which makes the phone feel wider than it actually is. But the same thing I also complained already about last year, and that's why I don't want to get too much into that. Obviously, since we have glass, it will pick up fingerprints. In terms of grip, it's different for everyone. But the fingerprint reader, I have to say, of all the flagships out there, is pretty much the worst, or let's say my least favorite one, just because of the fact that I can't just put my finger on it if I have it in the pocket and pull it out and it's unlocked. No, it doesn't work like that because the sensors have to be unblocked. On most phones, there is also this kind of pocket protection, but it still allow you to unlock it, and if the screen is uncovered, they unlock, but this one doesn't. So even if it's not in your pocket, as you can see, this is not fast. This is at best as good as a Note 9, which already doesn't have a good one. Position though is really good, just as well as the power button, a little bit on the higher side, but that's fine. About the volume rocker though, I have to say, not the best position, because if I play games like this, I'm a hitting button, and if I switch it the other way around, I'm very close to the power button. Obviously, depending on your hand size, it could be different, but this is not ideal. And the Google Assistant button is just something that we didn't really need, because it just makes it easier to mistake it with the volume rocker down. But yeah, that's that. Other than that, the camera pretty much doesn't protrude at all, which is really nice to see. Then we have the mic, SD card and SIM card tray, the buttons I've talked about, USB Type-C, the speaker, quite big holes I have to say, microphone, headphone jack, and yes, this is an important part. Then we have a notification LED, it's multicolored, and obviously, as you can see here, even though maybe not so much, we have a notch, which for some reason actually LG thinks they need to call second screen. Now you can hide the notch, as you can see here, and it does it, but it doesn't do it everywhere, because as you can see here, now it's not hidden. Now it's not hidden. If you play a video, it's hidden and all, but I'm not quite sure why it doesn't completely hide it all the time. But since I want to leave it like that, since I don't like the rest. What is also good about this phone, very small side bezels, and this not just one of the more narrow phones, but also quite small bezels, and obviously, yeah, you have to like the notch or not, because I'm gonna say this. If it's hidden, or even with this not fully hidden mode, this is fine. It doesn't really bother me, because it's still a very relatively compact one. Obviously, navigation buttons on the display, and let's actually already talk about it. It should be a killer amazing display with the 4 sub-pixels for white, for example, which makes it super bright. And yes, brightness is extreme, because without the extra brightness here that you can adjust, 100 is already at 600 lux, which is amongst the brighter ones. But with this turned on, I measured 1111 lux. Brightest value I've ever had here, even though I have to say I'm still not fully convinced of this display. It just doesn't wow me. For some reason, it's a little bit odd. You can obviously change the resolution, which you shouldn't, because why would you get a high-res screen and not use it? Now, in terms of screen color, you have Echo, Cinema, and when I say Echo, I meant Eco, yeah, Game and so on. You can adjust the color temperature and change the RGB levels, and this is all nice. But there is something weird about this display, and I simply cannot put it in words. That feels a little bit off. Like I said, I can't put it into words. Most people will not even notice, but using so many other phones, this just looks a little bit different, and different doesn't have to be bad, but it's just not what I like to see. Other than that, viewing angles are great. I have to say, due to the white subpixels, the black levels aren't the best ones. Those are maybe like on a mid-range level, like for example, a Poco has just about as good levels. So that's where it falls short, therefore though it's super bright. And the colors are still nice, it's a nice display, but I just can't give this 5 stars if I have something like a OnePlus, like a Note 9 and such. Very, very close to 5 stars, but I just can't give it 5 stars. Now what about this infamous speaker? Okay, I guess it's quite obvious. I'm actually not going into the whole boombox thing, because for one reason. How often do you use it on something that kind of resonates well so you could use it as a boombox? I mean, the feature is nice, and it does maybe even enhance your music listening experience or whatever you want to use on that, but if you have it flat on something sitting, you usually don't watch it, so I'm just gonna judge it from a standpoint, then I use it like in my hands, and then it's definitely, as you have heard, one of the loudest speakers out there. But it's not the loudest and the best sounding one, because something like a Note 9 has a lot more richness in the sound. It's just way more balanced. This has a lot kind of harsh highs. It's not super nicely balanced. It is a little bit thin in the mids, and it kind of tries to get something boomy with the bass, but therefore also the whole back vibrate. So it is a very nice speaker, and it's very high up on top on the 4.5 stars, but I just can't give it 5 stars due to still being a bottom firing speaker, and the whole boombox thing is something that I can't really give it much more power onto that. Now about the headphone jack, I don't think we really have to talk about it. It's super high. For example, I can push my Sennheiser 58Xs without any problem. I can push most of the gaming headsets without any issues, without any problem. Very high volumes, obviously super clean with extra equalizer options and so much more, as you can see with DTS 3D sound I'm not a big fan of, but the DAC, super nice. But still, unless I actually will give it 5 gold stars, but I would really have to get the power here to actually push a planar, because planars like my LTD2C, it can't push. Obviously you won't use these with a phone on the go, but still, yeah, let's not talk too much about that and get into the performance. Yeah, just as I said about the display, it's one of the best ones on the lower end, very close, and this is, yeah, 5 stars, because it is very smooth. It is quite responsive, it does react well, and it is a Snapdragon 845, but it's not quite on the same level as the very best ones out there, because for some reason there is still some occasional lag, some smaller little slowdowns, nothing big, nothing that really changes the experience, but as someone who went through all the 845 phones, it's just noticeable this one feels a little, just a tiny little bit more janky. But just a tiny little bit, and not enough to break the experience or anything, but enough for me to notice it. Gaming is also one thing that I have to mention just in terms of the normal use already, because it gets a little bit warm even in normal use, so it will throttle, I think, quicker than most out there. And just something to keep in mind. Now about the full charge, it takes about 1 hour and 45, which is actually not that fast considering that we only have a 3000 mAh battery. But for that actually small battery with this high resolution, battery life was better than I expected. Okay, my YouTube test wasn't all that impressive, because I got about 12 to even 14% for an hour of YouTube, which is like 4 or 5% more than something like a Note 9. So not really great for movie consumption. Also because I think the brightness and everything, even though I usually calibrate, but due to the subpixel, for some reason, here the smaller battery is noticeable. But in actual use, about 5 hours, I would say, that's my average. On mobile data, maybe possibly 5.5, but that's already stretching it, so I would be safe on the 5 side. And about, though not much more, like maybe 6.5, 7 hours. Possibly 7.5, but I would say 7 for Wi-Fi, which is noticeably worse than some other phones, because usually they have like 6 hours and 9 hours if it's a good flagship phone. So this one is below that, but it still scratches the 4-star mark, so it's still good enough. It should get most people through the day, but not with many resales. So of all the flagships out there, it's actually one of the weaker ones, but considering the small battery, the smaller size, and the high resolution screen, that's actually not that bad. Standby drain, a little bit subpar, but still okay. Now about the software. I actually at first thought I wouldn't really like it, and I still am not a big fan of the LG UI, but it doesn't really make much wrong. One thing that I wanted to show off though, for example, as you can see, this must be a bug. Wait. This, for example, if we go into the home screen settings, and if we use Smart Bulletin, which is something like a Google Home feed, Okay. Maybe the issue went away because the issue was for me that whenever I did enable the smart bulletin feature, my icons were gone. They were still there, but invisible. So maybe something triggered that and it fixed itself. So forget that. Now in terms of settings, like I said, I wasn't a big fan of it at first, but if you use it for a few more days than I usually do, you get used to it. I mean, it's looking okay. In terms of features, for example, you get quite a lot. You get a second screen, you get a font size, home touch buttons can be rearranged, and always on display is there. But, I wouldn't really use it because it just takes up too much battery life since this is not an AMOLED display after all. App scaling, display size, resolution, screen color, comfort view is there, brightness boost, as you can see 3 minutes, so you can't use it too long for that 1111 lux. Screen timeout, mini view. Yeah, pretty typical options. I don't actually like to go too much into that, but I have to get into one thing. LG is known for their quite bad software update policy. Their reputation isn't all the best, so slow updates and maybe not for all that long. Keep that in mind. If that is something very important for you, if you are someone who wants the latest and greatest always very soon, I don't think LG is the one to go for, but otherwise it's fine. Now let's check the app for the camera. As you can see, it takes a little bit longer to load, but it's fine. Here you can change between the modes, AI cam. Yeah, not really a fan of that. Portrait mode, Google Lens is there. As you can see here, quick change between flash and on and off. I like that. I don't like the menu popping up because I don't want to move too much with my hand. So this is good. Also, the change here, the modes, you can easily change from one lens to the other lens. Settings are there. So pretty good app, So let's check the actual pictures. Once again, from this distance, not sharp, but that's normal. For those who don't know, just so I mentioned it. From this distance, it's fine. And from this one, just as well. Colors look okay. Sharpness, I mean, it's okay, but it looks a little bit on the softer side. The bokeh mode works okay, but sometimes cuts off things a little bit weirdly. As you can see, it's not perfect, but in most cases, it's fine. I would still say this is at best, especially here you can see the bokeh mode doesn't really work out so well. Sorry, I mistook this. This was still normal. But once again here, so it's a little bit soft. Bokeh mode works okay. Colors seem fine. Contrast is a little bit weaker on the side, but yeah, not really much to complain about. More than 4.5 stars I can't give, so it's still weaker, noticeably weaker than something like a Note 9, especially with the bokeh mode. Yeah. Don't want to get too much into that. Without the flash, not really good. Many can do better. With the flash, though, actually quite a good result. Colors stay intact. And about the AI cam, I'll just say that keep it off. It just looks wrong. White balance gets off. It's way too warm and so on. So maybe you'll see one picture later. But as you can see, I would say this is a just about 5-star camera because I compared the pictures with a Note 9. And there is a difference, and I would say the Note 9 is on the higher end spectrum of a 5-star rating, and this one is on the lower end spectrum. I almost wanted to give it 4.5 stars, but then again I thought, especially with features like the wide view angle camera and the extensive manual mode that allows you for so much flexibility, change so much more settings, yeah, that's why it got 5 stars. Just in terms of quality, maybe not even that, but yeah, the wide view is something very, very important for many people. But the quality, many pictures look maybe sometimes just about as good as a Note 9, sometimes a little bit weaker, barely ever better though, but it's the manual mode, I guess, that makes up for it. And then low light, it's fine, but it's nowhere near a Note 9. That's just still kinda the highest mark for a normal low light picture. Here you can see the other ones. Let's quickly go through these. This is super low light that I just recently introduced. This is, yeah, with the flash, okay, but as you can see, those are very extreme conditions and it passes well. It's not a Note 9, sorry once again for comparing it with that one, but that just makes a so much better job. And here, for example, a low light selfie, wait, where is it? Here. And with the flash, it's actually totally usable. Now about video, that's a big part. So we have 4K 60, and yes, I know you won't see this since my video is just 1080p 60, but 4K 60, especially in terms of detail and sharpness, is really, really good because of a very high bitrate. It's like 65 Mbit. That is a really good value. Now, not really stabilized, at least not heavily with an EIS, but it works out fine in case you want that, just go for 4K 30. But the quality, especially if you don't move so much here, is really, really good. And that's easily 5 stars, just because of the high details. And if you, for example, check 4K 30, it looks a little bit jittery, which is something that I personally see on 30 frames on pretty much every cam. Not on every, but on most. But then we have stabilization, as you can see. A quite well working one. Yeah. 1080p 60 I'm not going to show because, yeah, 1080p 60. I don't know who will use it if you have 4K 60 or 4K 30. So this is it. Now let's get to the front cam. It is a little bit wobbling because there is some stabilization down and the crop is heavy. And the picture quality is not all that great. I will give it due to the stabilization that works out solid enough, 4.5 stars. But the quality itself looks a little bit kind of over sharpened for a not that sharp picture, if you get what I mean. So not all that impressive. Now the microphone is good, but it's not great. Maybe it is if you maybe don't block it, but in normal use, it sounded absolutely fine. It sounded rich, but it didn't sound quite so clear and quite so clean. And yeah, the low light cam definitely in video will degrade. It will diminish the quality. So I have to get into one thing when we are already getting to the conclusion. This phone, the problem was, for example, last year with the LG G6, I made a lot of enemies with just giving you too much of my personal opinion and saying that I don't like it, which is still kind of the thing with the G7 for one reason, but I'm gonna factor this out now. So if I just see it objectively, what it delivers and everything else, it's a very solid all-rounder phone, and I can recommend it because I know most people don't see a phone like I do. And for example, very nice display. A lot of people will love it. The speaker, many people will like the performance and everything else, the camera as well. Even though I have to say for the camera, I would wish for a tad bit more, a little bit something to the really, really, really high end, where it's just about on the same play field. So it can play with the big boys, but not quite on the same level. That's at least my perspective. Obviously, if you use the manual modes, it's something completely different because you have a way higher bitrate and options for that, for video and for photo. If you use all of that, then it can play with the big boys, and then it will even leap over the big boys. But most people don't. If you buy this phone, maybe then yes. But the thing is still, personally, I had high hopes. I had high expectations for this phone. When I got it, I was a little bit unimpressed because it doesn't feel kind of as amazing as I would like to. The display was off. The speaker is absolutely nice, but it's also not impressive. So everything is very, very, very good, but not quite where I wanted to. And it just fails to kind of stand out or do something drastically better or different than most other flagships, and that's why it kind of gets lost between all of those. Sure, it has the quad deck, it has the best headphone jack, yes, absolutely. But when I see so many complaining when I'm too harsh on the headphone jack, when I give my ratings, I don't think many people actually give so much about this quad deck. The ones that have this phone and have it appreciate it totally, but everyone else, I don't think that's something that makes you wanna buy it. And there is not anything about this phone that makes me wanna buy it. Like I said, easy recommendation because all the qualities are good, but I'm just missing something particular. I can't even put it into words. That's why I'm gonna stop. I hope until next time with a like. Until next time, bye.